All right, we are ready to start the best known church podcast. Welcome to the show. This is something that we've been kind of tooling with a little bit. If you watch some of our previous YouTube videos or Facebook Live videos, and we knew that we wanted to do something that was in the podcast form that you could watch recorded live, watch later on demand on YouTube, Facebook, social media, or in your podcast app. And we finally got it live. My name is Justin Nava, and you might know me from, let's quote The Simpsons. My name is Justin Nava. You might know me from such ventures as Mr. Church Marketer, Church Media Guys, Church Marketing School, and of course your ministry partner in communicating your church to your city and your community. And this is, 2022 has brought lots of interesting challenges for churches and a lot of revelations for what this agency needs to do. And so the purpose of the Best Known Church podcast, which first of all, if you're listening to this episode 1, congratulations. This is going to be life-changing for your church and for your community. I could go into a lot of things here, but I'm going to try to stick to my script here because I want to make sure this is as clear as possible and you get as much value out of today's launch episode. But really what this is about is helping you scale your invitation and your communication efforts so you can become the best known organization in your city. Meaning, think about how people in your city know about where Walmart is. If you're in a large city, think about everyone knows where the Hollywood sign is. Everyone knows where the Sears Tower is. Everyone knows where the Empire State Building is, okay? Everyone knows where those things are. In Houston, where I'm at, everyone knows where the beach is. Everyone knows where Galveston is, right? In Orlando, everyone knows where those places are. Now, imagine if in your city, whether you're in a large city or a small town, imagine if everyone knew where you were. And I'm not just talking about where you are, because it's not just enough to know about where Disney World is. You have to kind of know what to expect, what's going to happen, what do I need to do to get involved. In Disney World's case, how much money do I got to have, right? Imagine if people knew about you like they knew about the local Walmart. I know not only where it is, I know not only when I can go, but I know what I can expect. Imagine if everyone in your town knew about you as a church, what you can serve them with, what you can disciple them for, why you exist, what you do, and then also, yes, your events, your services, your ministries, how to connect, all that good stuff. That's the goal here of this show, is to get you to the point where you are the best known. And today in this episode, this first episode, I'm going to give you kind of the overall roadmap. This is exactly what I've been doing in churches since, pre-2010. I can't even give you an exact date, but we've been doing this for a long time. And I'm going to give you the roadmap here of what we're going to do. I'm calling it the definitive church marketing method. And this all started really, let's pick an official start date here. I'm drawing my line in the sand. In 2011, I had just gotten married. I had just graduated college. And I had just started my first full-time job. It was a busy summer in 2011. I graduated in May. I got married in July. And I started my first full-time job in June. So it really went May, June, July. Okay? Graduated, full-time job, marriage. It was a big summer in 2011. God was with me the whole way because there was no way I could have done this on my own. And my first full-time job was at my church that I was interning at since 2006. Full-time media IT director. And I've always been kind of good with computers. I was really more hired for the media stuff, but I also had to do some IT stuff, which also included managing our church's website. And actually, as I was hired, basically, I took everything I was doing as an intern, and it just became my full-time job, so I could do it exponentially more and better with better quality and more control. But also, I had to take over some of the IT stuff, which at that time included the website. And right now, we kind of think of the website, that's a marketing thing. That's not an IT thing. A lot of churches are still combined, but right now they're kind of separated. But back then, 11 years ago, it was combined. It was the same thing. And I had never done a website before. I had set up a youth MySpace. I had set up the church Facebook. I think by that time, 2011, it was public, and we had a church Facebook. But I had never actually set up a website. And I knew that our website right now was a liability, or at the time, 2011, was a liability because no one used it. And when I say use it, I don't mean no one went to it to see service times and message notes and bullet. No, No one used it as in, hey, come to our church. Oh, do y'all have a website? Nope. Don't go to the website. It was made in Microsoft. I think it was called One Page, I think is what the software was called back then. We didn't have software as a service. We didn't have Subsplash or Church Co or anything like that we could log into. We were using secular tools and very IT coder developer tools. And so it was my job to kind of take that over and create a website that really accurately reflected our church. And, what I realized was a lot of websites back then were not action driven. They didn't get you to take next steps. And that phrase, next steps, was just coming onto the scene back in 2011. And, I wanted to have something that was going to not only accurately reflect our church, that was number one thing to do, but also make it easy for people to get connected. And so my first 6 months of employment at that church, I did pretty much more part-time media work. And the rest of my time, my full-time job was essentially learning how to build a website. And looking back on it, man, it was tough. And I'll tell you right now, I'll just be honest, right? I'm always going to be discerning and honest here on this show. It was a waste of money. The church essentially paid me to learn how to make a website. And not only that, learn how to fail at making a website. I spent a lot of church budget and a lot of my own personal money on books, a lot of time at the library researching and learning. I bought courses. I bought a lot of different things from a lot of different people trying to learn how to make a great website. Fast forward to about 6 months later, we launch our website. This new website, you can't even find it anymore unless you go to archive.gov. And it was, if you look at it now, honestly, some of the church websites out there, it's still better than what they have now. But if you look at it now, you're like, man, that is so early 2010s, maybe even late 2000s. Image, service times, listen to the podcast, and because we were podcasting, and maybe some events, right, on the homepage. And then you can go through and actually see some ministries. But the interesting thing is, after we launched that site, 3 months later, we had a new members orientation. We're a Baptist church. So every 3 months, anyone that joins the church, we would have a luncheon for them and be an opportunity to meet the staff and to meet all the new members of the church. At that time, we had 13 families join. And I know sometimes I get my numbers confused on this. Sometimes I say 12, but it was actually 13. But what happened is at the time, pastor, stands up, introduces himself, introduces the staff, and he asked every one of the new members. I should pull up comments here in case anyone's got any comments. If you got any comments or questions, put it in the chat. He asked every one of the members, what made you choose Memorial? Why are you here, right? Because it wasn't the name. Memorial Church, Baptist Church is a terrible name for a church. What are we memorializing? I don't know. Pastor said, what made you join Memorial? 12 of those 13 families that joined that quarter, which we were not a large church, by the way, about 350 people. Okay, so 13 families was a big deal. But 12 of them stood up and in some manner, some fashion, some form, mentioned the website. I remember one mother, she had a few kids, said, I looked at the website and I saw that there was a safe, welcoming place for our kids. One soldier, this was Killeen, Texas, next to Fort Hood. And so it was a military town for all intents and purposes. And a soldier stood up and said, I just came here, just moved on to Fort Hood. This looked like a place that I could belong. It looks like, a place that would welcome me, tattoos and all. Every one of the families, not saying they came because of the website, but the website was an asset in getting them to make that decision to join our church. We had a large turnover at that church. And so the website was especially important for us because we had different people in our town every month. It was crazy. And so this was a great opportunity to learn exactly what brings people in, not just transferring from another church, but also coming to Fort Hood, looking for a clean start, never been in church before. Memorial might be the place, right? And so I kind of stumbled upon, I shouldn't say stumbled upon because I did a lot of work and invested a lot of time, energy, and money and resources into figuring out what that website should do for us. But it worked. And I did not expect it to work that well, if you can say a website should work. Okay, now fast forward a year, the pastor leaves, gets called to another church, and he asked me to do that new church's website. Sure. I'll just do exactly what I did and give it a different design. Okay. And we did that. And we were experiencing similar results. People were getting to know, in combination with pastors' efforts to be out in the community and make this church known in the community. The website was an asset to make that happen. And then I started serving other churches by recommendations and referrals. How can we help you with your website? Just let me take care of it for you. Why only do it for my church when I can do it for your church as well? It's kind of how I stumbled into website freelance. And then I started to realize having a good website is not the only solution. You have to be able to be found, to be seen. How do you get your website seen by more people looking for you? How do you get higher in Google? Because everyone knows if you're not on the first page of Google, you don't exist, right? You just don't exist, right? It's kind of like a meeting that's not on my calendar. It doesn't exist. I'm not going to go to that meeting because I live out of my calendar. So if you're not on Google, you don't exist. So what does it take to get a website to rank on Google? And then I learned I did everything I did for the website. I did it with search engine optimization. And not only that stuff changes every month. It's exhausting. Okay. But then I learned you've got to be able to properly represent yourself, not just in the words you say, but also the design, the look, because a consistent design breeds trust. So then we had to go into learn branding, and I was really stretching myself thin here. And then advertising became a really huge thing because there's so much messaging coming at us. People would go to look for a website, and then they'd end up on the website or teachings of a false teacher. And it's like, well, how do we get their attention away from what we know is wrong to what we know is true and what we know will best serve the family? And that's kind of when I realized we can't just pick one piece of the puzzle and expect it to do the whole work for us. If I have a puzzle, I should probably put a puzzle around here so I have it as a prop. If I have a puzzle piece and it's a blue puzzle piece, you can stare at that thing and guess all day long. And you might guess right. That's a sky. No, that's a piece of the ocean. No, that's a shark. No, what else is blue? That's a vending machine. I got a blue vending machine here that my daughter gave me, a little toy vending machine. No, it's a vending machine on a desk. You can't tell from one piece. The website alone is not going to get you more trust, authority, and people taking action to come to your church or come to your services or ask to be counseled and served. You can't rely on that one piece. You can take a couple pieces. You can take branding. You can take your logo. You can take your website. You can even take SEO or Facebook ads. Put them together and you might see a cloud and you're like, okay, it's not the ocean, it's the sky. Oh, but maybe it's Andy's room from Toy Story. You know, there are other things. Like it could be a nursery, right? It could be a painting that's in the picture of the puzzle, right? And not only that, we have to fight against the tide of what people already know about church in general based on their past histories. So if you come off just like any other church, we're just a small church. People are going to judge you based on their past experiences. Well, last time I went to a small church, I got hit in the hand with a ruler by an old curmudgeon lady at Sunday school that my grandma made me go to. And then my grandma made me sit on 2 Bibles and it was very uncomfortable so I could see. So no thank you, right? Even though your church is uniquely equipped to serve that person and God is calling that person to your church because you did not do a good job communicating yourself to that person and how you can serve them and change their life through the gospel, but also through the works that you're going to do because of the gospel, they are going to blow you off because you have not properly marketed yourself or promoted yourself or communicated yourself to that person. See, it's not our job as in marketing to compel people, even though I like to say that a lot. We're not compelling, we're not bringing people to us based on our will to have them do what we want. Our marketing merely acts as an asset to the work that God is calling them to do. God is calling them, and the enemy is going to fight against that and use everything in its power to fight against God's calling to that person. And it's our job to remove all those obstacles and communicate, this is the place for you. This is the life-saving message for you. Forget the secret. Forget the prosperity of whatever else so-and-so is teaching. Do it yourself. Forget your best life now. This is what God has for you, and we can serve you and your family best. That's what church marketing is, and that's what your church needs to become the best known. I got an interesting story to tell you at the end of this show about one of these churches. So Okay, so we know what church marketing is, okay? It took me 11 years to figure out exactly the different pieces of the puzzle that are needed to give your community the full picture, but not only present them to find out the full picture, but to get that in front of them and call them to action and let God use our marketing to get people in, okay? A lot of folks will say, well, just preach the gospel. Why do you need Facebook ads? Why do you need to invest in a website? And why do you need Google Grant or anything else? Why do you need to go on podcasts and be in the news and write press releases? Just preach the word and God will bring them in. Amen. Absolutely. Why don't we actually take some action and make it easier for those people to come in? Because the enemy is going to make it hard. Not only that, the enemy's not going to make it hard to come to church. He's going to make it easy to stay home. He's going to make it easy to continue doing what they've always done in hopes that they will fill that God-shaped hole in their heart. And so, and then another point too is, just preach the word and let the people come. Then we shouldn't be spending any money on kids ministries. We shouldn't be spending any money on air conditioning. Why does every church building have an air conditioning? Why do you need air conditioning? Just preach the word and the people will come. Right? We do things to make it easy for people to make the decision to come, connect, and hear the gospel and hopefully experience that life-changing conversion to live the life abundantly that they're called to live. Marketing is one way that we remove obstacles and provide a clear path for people to come hear that life-saving message. So what do you need? Right? What are the different pieces of the puzzle? I'm going to give you 9 things here. And I know it's kind of daunting. I'm going to split it up. And so let's call it 3 things, even though 3, good old Baptist boy here, 3 points with 3 subpoints each. So let's say 3 points with 3 subpoints each of exactly what you need to do. And this is exactly what we do for our clients. And I've put it in a way to where you build a foundation and then stack upon that. If you just build the foundation, I guarantee you're going to reach 10 times more people than you ever have before. If you build the second stage, if you stack on top of that, you're going to 10x that again. You're going to reach 100 times more people. And if you build the third stack on that, you're going to reach 1,000 times more people. And again, this is where you need to become the best known. Not just best known, they're at that I've seen that church. I drive past it all the time. No, I know that church. I know they feed hungry people. They assist widows. They care for orphans. They really believe what they think. And you know what? God keeps, I keep feeling a pull to this church. I guess I better go. That's the goal. That's what we want. That's why we become the best known church. So let's get into it. I don't have any visuals for you. We are building a workshop that will have all this special stuff, but just a high level. What does it take? What is the definitive church marketing method to put all the pieces together to have the full picture of why people should care about your church? And not just why care about your church, but I want them to ask, well, why shouldn't I go to church? Why wouldn't I? This place is awesome, right? I want your church, and by the way, when I say your church, I'm not talking about a building, right? If your church meets in homes, you still need this. If you meet in a home, you still need this. If you're just a ministry, you need this. Okay? And this is not a duplication of what other businesses do. This is taking what businesses have done, leaving the trash that they do, and taking the good proven stuff that really comes down to human psyche, which is basically how God designed us, and utilizing it for the church to communicate in a way that doesn't sacrifice your church's integrity, doesn't rely on gimmicks, and doesn't require you to have a full-time team either. You can do this on your own. You can do this with a part-timer, although it's going to take a long time. Or you can do this with a ministry partner, whether that's our agency, or you just work with a handful of freelancers that kind of piece everything together for you. Either way, this is what your church needs to be the best known organization, have more people coming to you so you can make more disciples, you can have a greater impact, and become the best organization in your community, because that will bring the people to your doors. Let me take a sip here. So I'm going to start here with the foundation. And this is the foundation because you need this. If you try to stack phase 2 and 3, which I'll tell you the names when we get to them, I don't want you to get distracted. If If you try to stack that without this foundation, you are going to be stuck in the same cycle you're in right now. And I cannot tell you how many people come to me and say, we need, for example, we need a new website. The website is not part of your foundation, right? The website platform is not part of the software that you use, even the design you select is not part of your foundation. And if you try to build your website without the foundation I'm about to share with you, you're going to be shopping for a new website every year. You're going to be constantly unhappy, and you're going to feel like this is not doing a job because you have not put in the work to have the foundation. It's like when people talk about Jesus without knowing him. You don't have the proper foundation. You're going to say, Jesus, I knew you and I did works in your name. And he's going to say, I never knew you. So you're going to go out and you're going to build a website. You're going to run Facebook ads. You're going to try to do press releases. But if you don't have the foundation, the city is going to say, I never knew you. You need this foundation. And it starts with being clear. You need clarity in your messaging to clearly communicate the value and importance of your church. Because if you cannot communicate exactly what your church is and why your church is and how to get involved with your church, no amount of marketing is ever going to make a difference because you're just going to confuse people instead of call them to action. You have to be clear. And clarity is not your mission statement. Okay? I have something you'll hear me refer to often as the mother-in-law test. I love my mother-in-law. She's a great woman. She did a very fine job, and honestly, sometimes God did a fine job in spite of her to raise my wife and make her the woman that I wanted to marry and be the mother of my children. She loves our family. She was here for Easter. But at the same time, when you talk to her about the gospel and Jesus, she says, I understand. I'm fine with my fate going to hell. We had that conversation one time. And the only time she's ever stepped foot in a church is to come to our wedding. And so whenever I write for a church website or for social media, you need to not only think about why would they care, but you need to also ask, would they understand? So if you say, for example, this is like something that we just worked with a church through, they say they want to become a discipleship center, right? That was the first line on their website. We're a discipleship. What does that mean? Right? So often our church communications sound like another Waco situation. Two people who are on what I call the other side of the door. I had an associate pastor, Dr. Sam. He always communicated and said, on this side of the door, we can talk like this. But once you get onto the other side of the door, we need to make sure we're clear in our communications to make sure that they understand it. Because we don't want to confuse them with the gospel. We want to help them and give them support with the gospel. So when you think about your messaging, I always run it through what I call the mother-in-law test. You could also call it the lost person test, the just out from under a rock test. I'm just making these names up. Call it whatever you want it to be. You need to be clear. What is this church about? And when you say something like your mission statement, we exist to make disciples who make disciples, that sounds like a cult to a non-church person who doesn't know what that stuff is, right? We exist to equip the saints. Well, then why would I go to the church? I'm not a saint. I'm no saint, right? That may be our message, but it's not how we clearly communicate it to our community. Communicate community. Ooh, there's something there. I'll have to workshop that. We need to be able to clearly communicate. So what is the message that you need? This is the first thing we do for most of our clients is we sit down and we say, what is it that we need to communicate to reach the right people with the right message in the right way, in the right timing, in the way that they can understand it? So when you say we make disciples, we make disciples, well, how do you get people in to make disciples? Well, number one, we have a huge milk and bread ministry, and we have a medical debt payment solution. And we know that will bring people in so we can share the love of Christ with them. And at the same time, we can share discipleship with them, right? Or put them through our disciple process. Okay, cool. So you're here to support them. You're here to love the community, right? Now, I'm not saying love God, love people. That's also kind of vague, right? But that's the kind of questions you need to ask to get to that clear message until eventually you work down to the point where you might say something like, hey, we're here because the community needs hope and healing in these crazy times. Life is chaotic enough. Jesus is easy. So if you're feeling like the world just isn't for you, if you're feeling like there should be more to this, if you're feeling like you're not living up to your full potential, this is the place to find your potential. This is the place to find healing. This is the place to find hope. This is the place to find purpose. And how do we do that? Well, we start by making you a disciple. We start by discipling you, right? That's what clarity is. So it's taking what you have and clarifying it so that anyone can understand it, right? And you can do this through a couple different ways. We run the story brand framework. We have a story brand guide that works with our clients to clarify that message. So then we can build upon that clear messaging to the second part of the foundation, which is becoming to become memorable, which means that people remember you, right? And we start this process with your identity, which is basically your, for lack of better terms, your logo and your style. Okay. Your logo is much more than just a picture that represents your church. It also needs to be memorable, and that when people see that, they know that's the church. That's the church that helps people. That's the church that loves the city. That's the church that, what is it? Hashtag, I love Gwinnett. What was the Gwinnett hashtag? For Gwinnett. Hashtag for Gwinnett, right? That's the hashtag for Gwinnett Church, right? They do it with a hashtag. You do it with a logo. But then also your style, right? Consistency breeds trust, right? The offspring of consistency is trust. There's a reason why when you see that swoosh, you know Nike. When you see that bitten Apple logo, you think Apple. You think computers. You might think overpriced computers, but I think, hey, they just work and they get me as a creative. Right? So you have to know your message, and then the second step is you have to be able to clearly communicate that message through a visual medium. Because you can't say, hey, come to our church because we're going to feed you, we're going to support you, and we're going to show you how to live a better life than you have now, because life is crazy, but Jesus is easy. You can't put that on a poster or a billboard every time, right? But what you can do is you can put your mark. And when people see that mark, they know that's the church that supports people. They feel, I'm glad they're in my town. And their emotion is joy, because they know that if that time ever comes, they have a safety net. They have security. They have hope. Okay. Now, I know I speak a lot in consumerist terms because, again, on that side of the door, that's what they need. People came to Jesus not because they wanted a sermon, but because they wanted bread and fish. Right? So the last part of your foundation here, if you're taking notes, part 3, is to be intentional with your presentation of your message. Now, for most of us, this is going to be our website, because when people hear your message, when they see your identity, they want to learn more about you. And instead of going to your church and asking you, they're going to go to the equivalent of your online church home, which is your website. Now, your website, you'll hear me talk about software doesn't matter, okay? You could build it in Squarespace, Weebly, Churchco, Tithely, Subsplash, TurdPress. I call it that because no pastor, unless they have coding or developer or website experience, should ever be touching WordPress. So I always call it TurdPress because I don't like it, right? I run a web agency. I hate TurdPress, okay? But no matter what any of that does, you could make a giant mess of that if you don't have an intentional foundation to your website. Picture this is like the blueprint of your church building. If you ever built a church building, you know that you've got to start not only with the blueprint, you got to know the location, you got to know the area demographic, you got to know the city laws, city code, permits that are needed. You need to know all this. Then you get the blueprint. And that's when you actually say, okay, we're going to have a kids area here with one entrance, one exit. We're going to have the sanctuary here with 4 exits. We're going to have the fellowship hall. We got to make sure we have the kitchen next to the fellowship hall. No one wants to walk across the church to get from the kitchen to the fellowship hall, right? You ever been a part of a church that like didn't have the kitchen next to the fellowship hall? You know that building was not originally built to be a church. So you have to kind of know exactly what your website is supposed to do. And this could also translate to your social media. But you have to know what is the outcome you want? What is the direct action you want people to take? And if they're not ready to take that direct action, what is a indirect or transitory or secondary action that you want them to take? And that's it. I just want them to do these two things. If the website cannot get them to do one of these two things, it is not doing its job. Right? And then you have to know exactly what's it going to look like. How are we going to inspire people to take action, not inform them? No one ever did anything based on information. They always do it because of inspiration. So you have to kind of map out, what are we going to do to inspire people to take action? Okay, so number one, we want them to come to church. Number two, we want them to go to groups, right? Or let's say number two is become more popular since the pandemic. Number two, we want them to watch an online sermon. What are we going to do to inspire them to come to church or watch an online sermon? I'll give you a hint. Telling them service times is not going to inspire them to come. No one is ever saying, very few people are ever saying, as I get older, I start catching myself speaking in absolutes that may not be accurate. I would say 1% of people are saying, I'm going to church this Sunday. I'm going to go to this church on Sunday, but only if they meet at a service time that will work within my schedule. Therefore, the first thing I need to know that will inspire me to come to church is your service times. I don't care what time it is. If I want to go somewhere because it's important, I will be there. Right? If I've got a kidney stone and the hospital says we are only doing the little laser blast thing, what is it called? Ultrasound, where they break up the kidney stone. I've never had it before. My mom's terrible with it. But you know, if I had a kidney stone and the only time they could blast my kidney stone was at 2:30 in the morning tomorrow, I'm going to be there 2:30 in the morning at tomorrow because it hurts that much. So your plan of action should not start with your service times. No one goes to Walmart because they're open 24/7. They go to Walmart because they need something, and Walmart just happens to be there to meet their needs 24/7, right? So that's what it is. So that's the foundation. Only then can you really move on to actually being discoverable. And by the way, just doing this foundation, when you clarify your message, it's going to be easier for your staff and for your congregation to easily invite people to church because they know exactly how to invite them. They know what words to use. They know why they came. Therefore, they are easily able to share why they came. And then once you have your memorable mark, it's easier for your print items or any digital items, any digital invites or print invites. You have that style so it's consistent. So whether I see your church on a yard sign, a business card, an invite card, the sign outside, a banner outside, it all looks the same. Therefore, they must know what they're talking about. Therefore, I can trust them. How many times have we seen some sleazy salesman say, hey, you want to buy this? Hey, you want to buy this? Hey, you want to buy this? And there are 3 different ways to present us the same offer, and we can't trust it because we don't know exactly what we're buying, right? So when you clarify and when you become memorable in a way that's visually appealing, and then you have an intentional plan to get people to connect, and when I say get people to connect, I really mean inspired to connect, then you can maximize your discovery and actually move on to phase 2, which is maximize your discovery, right? You have to know what your foundation is, and then you have to capitalize it and make sure that you know what you're talking about by using it on people that are already searching for something like you. Okay? Either they're searching for you and they're directly typing in First Baptist Edinburgh into the Google search, or they're searching churches near me, and you can know whether or not they're coming to your church based on that, or whether they're hearing about you. Only then from your foundation can you move on to actually accurately representing your church online to your community. Now, a lot of this is going to be everything that we do as an agency is digital because that's our lane, right? In fact, I worked with an agency that did print, and I know a lot more print than I ever care about. I feel like Jim Halpert from The Office. I can tell you everything you need to know about paper, stock, signs, banners, all that stuff. It's not my calling. Okay. So I stay in my lane on digital, but know that all of this, the intentional, what is your flyer going to do? What is the one thing you want people to do when they see your flyer? That applies to print as well. Okay. So next to maximize your discovery, you have to be accurate and reflecting who you are. And that means, let's just start with your website. Okay. On your website, does it accurately reflect who you are? Does the pictures on your church website actually look like the people that go to your church. It doesn't have to be the exact people that go to your church. I understand sometimes we don't have the best pictures, but as long as they look like it. If you go to an all-white church, I don't want to see interracial mixed couples on your website because that's an inaccurate reflection. You are doing a disservice to the black family that's going to come, and they may not feel comfortable, right? If you do want them to come, communicate that in a different way other than lying to them about the people that you put on your website, okay? I think diversity in church is great. Just don't lie your way into trying to get there. That's not a practical method. I think that's something churches used to try. I think we figured it out. It doesn't work. And also, I don't think it's ethical. Okay. So accurately reflect your church. Show the people that go to your church. Show the events and happenings. What happens on a Sunday? What happens on the weekdays? Where are the different places that I can plug in? And then not only that, part of being accurate is including the right information. I had someone tell me when I launched a website and we were just doing some feedback stuff, someone told me and said, your youth page is banging, right? Like you've got pictures of the kids, you've got events on there, you've got FAQs, you've got service times, descriptions, you've got a picture of the leader, of the youth leader. It looks amazing. And then they went to the kids page and it says, kids service. We want to teach your kids and love on them like Jesus. Sundays at 9:30. No pictures, a logo of a tree, and that's it. And their immediate thought was, well, this is weird because what is the kid ministry hiding that the youth ministry page looks so good, but the kids ministry page just doesn't have any information on it? It's sketchy. And it was at that point that we decided as an agency, or I decided as an agency, that anytime we're going to launch a site, the pages are going to be complete or they're not going to launch, period. There is no use in launching a site that doesn't accurately reflect who you are. And part of that is having all the information. And the funny thing is, side story, whenever we do launch a site and a ministry page isn't complete and they're not on the site when it launches, that information usually comes in within 2 days. So then we can put it on the site and make it live. Fun fact. So you have to launch your perfect website without missing content, and you have to do it without downtime. That's a whole different technical thing. But then also, let's also apply it to your social media. Your social media needs to accurately reflect your church. A lot of churches will just put announcements. Are you a consumerist church? Then don't just put announcements on your website. On your social media. A lot of churches will just put their live streams on their social media. Does your church only preach on Sundays? Then don't just put live services on your social media. There needs to be a blend. And in fact, one of these shows, I'll go through my special formula that has been proven to give you accurate reflection of your church while giving you something easily and reproducible and duplicatable so you can accurately reflect your church without having to spend more than 5 minutes a week trying to get this done. Okay. So you can definitely do that. Just the first thing is you got to be accurate, right? That's how you maximize discovery. Because no one wants to come across something that's going to be misrepresented and then it's not that, and then they're just going to speak bad about you. So then when people discover you, they're going to think, oh, that's that church that lied about who their pastor was and how long their service is. That's a true story from me and the family. The next thing you got to do is you got to maximize your discovery, which means your ability to be found on the number one place that people go to when they don't have an answer and their friends and family don't have an answer, which is why it's important to be known, because when people need a church, when people need help and support, when people need purpose, they think, who do I know? And then they think, who does my dad know? Who does my buddy know? Who does my coworker know? And if they don't know, they'll Google. So you have to not only be known to come to the lips of those people to make a recommendation of you, but you have to be known by the total strangers that have no support. And guess what? It's 2022. People are moving away from their families. Brothers are not talking to each other for a decade. The family unit is, I would say, it's on a deathbed in American culture. And so, yeah, people are going to go to Google more than we think. So you have to be found on Google. How do you do that? To be honest, in short, you got to make Google happy. You got to do the research. You got to watch the videos. You got to read the books. You got to read the articles. You got to take the courses on search engine optimization and know what is it that Google needs to see for us to be trustworthy and authoritative in Google's eyes so that we can be ranked higher. This can be done through several things. Mobile responsiveness, site speed are the biggest things, but then also content optimization, making sure that not only the tech side, but the usability side, user intent, felt needs, all that stuff needs to communicate correctly so that Google knows what you're about and properly make the recommendation. And not only that, be confident in making that recommendation. Because I can think of my favorite Mexican restaurant in Houston. Well, at least in North Houston that we've tried, Gringos. But if someone says, I want a nice, like maybe more upscale Mexican recommendation, I'm not going to send them to Gringos. I'm going to send them to Uncle Julio's. Or even better, like what about Brazilian? Go to Fogo de Chao, right? But if someone's just searching for cheap Brazilian food, I'm not going to recommend they go to Fogo de Chao. I'm going to recommend them, I don't know, go to someplace down the street. Go to Google because I don't know. Right? So in order to be found, you have to have all those optimizations in place. And unfortunately, that's the part of this. I can't get into it today. Unfortunately, I can't get into it today, but just subscribe to the show. We're going to touch on this along with all of these points here in the next foreseeable future. And then finally, to maximize your discoverability, you have to be represented. You have to be able to be well spoken of and represented by your people to the community. The easiest, most low-hanging fruit, the lowest of fruit that hangs is online reviews. Meaning your people who love you, and even the people that are just okay with you, are going to go online and leave you a review. An honest review, hopefully that's 5 stars, to say, I love this church, I love this preaching, I love this ministry, I love these kids, I love this kids ministry, I love this compassion, I love this milk and bread ministry, I love the widows ministry, I love the divorce ministry. These guys know what they're talking about. They helped me, they served me, they changed my life, they changed my mindset, they changed my thinking, they supported my family, they supported my brother, my mother, my father, my kids. When no one else would, this church did. We often hear the phrase, but God. I love writing that. You tell a story and then you write, but God had other plans. But God knew better. But God's never done. So when everything is going on in the world, in your community, someone needs to be able to say, but the church will treat you right. But the church will be there for you. But the church will serve you. And yes, ultimately it's Jesus. The church is just the guide. It's the method. It's the hands. Okay? You have to be properly represented online through your online reviews, but then also you can utilize testimonials and stories. Okay? You don't have to just represent your people, represent the work that God is doing throughout your church online. Okay, part of that can be online reviews. Part of that can be a YouTube page, stories of Houston, stories of Dallas, stories of Washington, stories of Chicago, anything like that, to get the word out that God is doing amazing things in your church, and this is something that people should check out. The last phase, and this is I'm spending a lot of time on this because I'm spending a lot of time on the foundation because that's the most important. I'll spend a good chunk of time on discovery, which I think we just did. You got to be accurate with your representation online. You got to be able to be found. And you got to be represented well. But then also you have to then, once you have all those pieces and you know what you're doing works, you know your message is working, you know people are remembering you, you have intentional steps that people need to take, and you have a website that properly reflects you, that people can find when they search for churches near me. Hey, they're searching for people, they're searching for our church, and they're seeing online reviews, and they're seeing what people are saying, and they're seeing the things that God's doing. That only speaks to the people that are looking for you. That only speaks to the people that know of you or know of God and know of support and know that churches are there to help. There's an exponentially 50 times more people that don't even know you, don't know the good things that God is doing, don't know Jesus, don't know what Jesus can do, don't know the hope and healing of the gospel, that don't know that life gets better, that don't know that Jesus is easy. They don't know all of these things. And so we need to increase their attention onto our church. And that's the last phase, because once we know we've got a clear foundation, and once we know that we are reaching the people and effectively communicating to them that already know about us and need our services, ministry support, and of course our Savior, then we can go out and we can go reach people that don't even know that they know Jesus. Don't even know that they need to know Jesus. They don't even know that they need what the church can offer them. Right? I told this example a while ago. If I ran a divorce ministry, my goal is to get every divorced person into my church. My goal is if prayer service is happening in the sanctuary and divorce ministry is happening in a back room, my goal is to have every divorced person come to our church, so we would need the sanctuary. That's my goal. However, in a town of 100,000, a divorce ministry will only have about 10 people, even though there's 5,000 divorcees or divorcees, whatever they're called. I want to get those 5,000 into our ministry. So how do we get the people that don't know that they need us, that don't know us, that don't have anyone in their life to speak, say, hey, the church is here for you, that don't see our messages or maybe see our other messages, but don't know that we have a divorce ministry and can serve them? We have to increase their attention on our church. Okay. And there are a million ways. I got a thing up here that has everything you can use to effectively advertise your church. I'm going to hit the 3 that I know work for most churches. Okay. And number 1, that's the Google ads. And you can get it for free through Google for nonprofits. You can get up to $10,000 a month in free ad spend, which means you don't, unless you pay someone to manage it and create, because you got to create campaigns, you got to create creative, you got to know how to optimize it, you got to read a bunch of data sheets and all that stuff to be able to use that money effectively. If you can't use that money effectively, Google's not going to let you throw it down the drain. If you're not using it effectively, they're going to cut you off. You got to have someone that knows how to do it. Okay. But if you do, Google will give you $10,000 a month, which means Google will put your website in front of thousands of people a month looking for kids services, support, divorce help, right? If a divorcee searches in my town, searches for something like divorced women's activities, the divorce ministry could show up at the very top, and Google did that for us for free. Or they could do it for you for free, excuse me. The only catch is you got to be a 501c3, right? They got to be able to write it off their return at the end of the year. Yes, it's a benefit for them. I think it's an exponentially larger benefit for churches. So get the Google grants. You have to be a 501c3. But once you do that, you can utilize that free ad spend. And that's going to get in front of people that aren't necessarily searching for churches, but searching for things that your church can address, right? In the summer, there's a huge uptick in searches for kids activities, kids camps, day camps, stuff like that. And so your kids ministry could show up. Your VBS. Not many people are searching. Only Christians, really. Only Christians are searching for vacation Bible schools. But you can come up under other searches and you can pay to get there. But guess what? Google's going to pay the price for you, right? The other thing you can do is that's how you're going to be known, by the way. That's how you're going to be known by more people in more ways than just Sunday at 9:30. That's how you get all of your ministries, all of your events, and all of your everything about you to be known. Your sermons could even show up in this engine in people's searches. If you did a sermon on, I'm just going to stick on divorce. If you did a sermon on God's plan for marriage and you have a specific sermon message about divorce, when people are searching divorce help in Houston, Texas, your sermon could come up. And they have the chance finally to watch what God has to say, not what some lawyer has to say. That's powerful. And again, you need to have the first 2 phases. You need to have your foundation, and you need to be easily communicate and be discovered, and then you can go out and make them discover you. Number 2, it's kind of a split right now. So most churches are most equipped, but you need to be seen more. Not just by people looking for help, but by people that don't even know that they should be looking for it. And so you need to be seen more. The easiest way to do this is Facebook ads. And when I say the easiest way to do it, that's like saying the easiest way to buy a car. Buying a car is still difficult. I don't care if you go to CarMax or any of we don't have salesmen. You just pay this price and finance it at that price. It's still hard because you got to have good credit. You got to have this and you got to have that and you got to have the plan and you got to sign this and you got to go pick it up. It's a whole thing, right? It's hard to buy a car. But God, you have to be seen by more people. And so when I say Facebook ads are the easiest way, they're still hard, but it's the easiest of the difficult ones. The other one that we're seeing tremendous results with is YouTube ads, but it's harder because you got to have video. Right? It doesn't have to be good video. You just have to have video. And that's something that we're hoping to increase in our ability to serve churches with YouTube ads by making the process easy for them so that we can put them on YouTube ads. Now, the Google grant does not cover YouTube ads before you get too excited, but it is effective, and Facebook ads as well. And what this is people are scrolling through Facebook. Let's just use Facebook for an example. It could also work with YouTube. But people are scrolling through Facebook, and they are there for entertainment, for education, for emotion. Because I don't see political discussion entertainment. It just doesn't. Okay. You won't hear me talk a lot about politics. And I just tell you right now, I'm a libertarian, so I make everyone mad. People are scrolling through Facebook and they're just mindlessly scrolling. How about we utilize and take advantage of all the data that we hate Facebook has? Okay. Now, we don't get this data. When you advertise on Facebook, Facebook doesn't give you all the divorcees in your city. No. But what you can do is say, hey, any divorced people in our city that are newly divorced in the last 6 months, maybe moved into a new house by themselves, show them our divorce ministry ad. And Facebook, who knows who that is, will show that ad to someone. So while they're scrolling through vanity and gluttony and laziness and just entertain me and consume me because my life is horrible right now, because my spouse just left me and I'm bored out of my mind because I need to distract myself from the pain I feel down inside, your church could come up and say, God wants to speak to you at our divorce ministry retreat, or whatever the event is. You can be seen by more people utilizing these platforms that know more about us than we even know about ourselves. We can take advantage of that, not invading anyone's privacy, but take advantage while we can to communicate, the right message to those right people in the right way. Because Facebook ads work. If they didn't work, it wouldn't be such a large industry, even when it goes down. That's like saying, oh, I'm broke. I used to have $1 million. Now I only have 980,000, whatever the number is, 980,000, right? You still got something in you, buddy. So even though Facebook stock, might go down, prices might go up, whatever, blah, 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 Facebook ads still work. Okay. And then YouTube ads as well. So you could actually say before someone watches a video on how to file for divorce, we can show them our divorce ministry promo. That's powerful. You no longer have to blast out into the city and say, I hope whoever needs to hear this hears this. You can now say, God has a plan for you. And before you go through with this, there's counseling available, because there is nothing more difficult than going through this process. Our church can help you avoid that process using the faith and restorative healing of Christ in your marriage. I wouldn't use that exact language, but that's essentially on our side of the door. That's what we're telling them, right? The last step is the most important. It is the one that lasts. All of these other steps can be done in a month. They can be done in a half a year. They can be done in a quarter. They can be done in 1 year. I wouldn't recommend taking more than a year to take all of that and get it done. The last step is the one that exponentially scales. It will take you from 100 people to 100,000 people. And that's be everywhere. If you are everywhere, people will know who you are. In Houston, Texas, people know who Lakewood Church is, and they know who Joel Osteen is because he's everywhere. Imagine if your city, if you're not in Houston, imagine if your city knew about your church like our city knows about Joel Osteen. Imagine if your city knew about your church like my city knows about Lakewood. Imagine if your city knew about your church like LA knows about Hollywood. That's the game changer. And how you do that is you actually have to go out. And we have some systems that we coach people and recommend to get more attention than this way. But you have to go out and appear in front of new audiences and new communities that you're not already reaching. Now, you have a proven foundation. You have a proven message. You have proven to be attractive to those discovering you. And you have proven now that you can grab the right attention and be valuable to them and get them to interact. Now you need to scale that to other cities, other communities. And when I say community, I don't mean other cities. I realize that could have been confusing. When I say community, I don't mean city. I mean, there's a black community, there's a blue collar community, there's a Latino community, there's a Korean speaking community. Now, if you don't speak Korean, I don't want you to go to the Korean radio, right? But there's gaming communities. There's working communities, there's shift work communities, there's morning work communities, there's stay-at-home communities. So what you could do, Pastor, let's just keep with the divorce care. That's such a great ministry that has helped so many people I know. You could take your divorce care ministry and not only reach divorced people, but you can go and you can make an appearance on a local mommy podcast, on a local mommy blog. You could do a segment on the news promoting your new divorce retreat. You do a press release. You can have a radio announcement. You can have signs across the city that will draw attention, right? In Houston, the rodeo is a big deal. You hear about the rodeo on TV. You hear about it on radio. You hear about it on podcasts. I got YouTube ads for the rodeo. There is no reason your church cannot be just as everywhere as the rodeo, as anything else you see on the news. Okay? That's the key. You might hear it be called omnipresent or be omnipresent. Same thing. You have to be everywhere. So you take your divorce care ministry, which right now you're just reaching divorced Christian women. Let's say it's a women's divorce care ministry. You're just reaching divorced Christian women that are part of the church or are friends of the church. You go on the mommy blog and you say, hey, look, we understand that being a single mother is hard. That's why we have this divorce care ministry where we are actually supporting you and giving you tools to be the mother that God's called you in spite of the chaos that's come across your life. Now you're reaching divorced parents that have never heard about your church, but they come to the divorce care ministry and through that they can be discipled. Then you go on the news, right? You go on the 6 a.m. news. You got a 90-second segment. I understand that's not enough time, but you do that. You reach working moms that are divorced, that don't listen to the mommy blog because their work is their main thing. And while they're getting ready, they listen to the news. They hear about you and they say, that sounds like something I could use right now. Then you hit a radio ad. You hit the shift workers that are driving home at midnight or driving to work at midnight. They hear your radio ad. Right? That's the key. That is the key to 10xing your reach. And let me tell you this, church growth has a negative connotation. And when I say, you'll very rarely hear me say grow your church because that seems like a very vain thing. And I understand that. In fact, I was kind of raised. You don't want to grow your church. You might want to grow your impact. You obviously want to make more disciples. And yeah, when our church gets to a certain size, we break off, we plant a new church, and we go and reach a new kind of people through a new kind of church instead of trying to get everyone to come to our church, right? So if you're like, I don't want to grow my church, that's not my main goal, I understand. What I want you to do is get in front of 10 times more. I keep pointing over here because I have a big poster. I want you to reach 10 times more people to increase your impact, to make more disciples. And yeah, if you want, grow your church. Because a friend of mine, Brandon Swain, used to do youth ministry work, said, butts and seats is such a vain concept, but every butt in a seat is a story. And every butt in a seat is a soul that needs to be won for God. And for some churches, we're best equipped to reach those people and initiate that discipling process by getting them to church on Sunday morning. I understand that. So if you want to focus on church growth, hey, great. If you don't want to focus on church growth, you still need this stuff because this is how you're going to get enough interest and enough people to plant a new church, to plant a new group, to interact with your ministry. This is how you do it. This is the definitive church marketing method. You have to set a clear foundation. Be clear, be memorable, be intentional. Then you have to maximize your discovery. You have to be accurate, be found, be represented. And then you have to increase attention on your church and services. You have to be known, you have to be seen, and you have to be everywhere. If that sounds like what you need, I want you to do two things right now. Number one, wherever you are, sounds like an invitation. Wherever you are, heads bowed, eyes closed, wherever you are in your seat, I want you to do two things. If you only do one thing right now, I want you just to subscribe. If you're watching this on Facebook, hit the like button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this in your favorite podcast platform, hit the subscribe button. That's all I want you to do. If that's not enough, if you're like, I can't just learn about this stuff, I need someone to do it for me, go to our website, navachurchmarketing.com, N-A-V-A, churchmarketing.com. There's a link down below. Click on that, schedule a call with our team. We'll walk through this roadmap with your church for free. And we don't even try to sell you on the first call. I will tell you, follow-up calls, we may try to sell you because that's our moral obligation to help your church reach more people. But on the first call, It's all about you. It's always about you. But on this call, it's not about what we can do for you. No, it's about what you need to do for you. Okay. Let me end it with this. Good old Baptist boy here. Let me shut my Bible at this point. Let the worship pastor come up to get his guitar and start playing underneath. But let me end it with this, right? This is a story I just heard in a prayer group literally 2 days ago. This is my first time trying to retell this story, but I think it so accurately represents what your church needs to do here and what we are trying to do for your church through this podcast, the Best Known Church podcast. There were some men in a barber shop, and there was a boy sweeping, just trying to make some extra money. The men in the barbershop were doing their usual jabbering, and the barbershop owner says, "This boy is an idiot. He is so stupid. He's a good sweeper, but man, this boy is stupid." And one of the patrons said, "Well, what are you talking about? He doesn't look that stupid." The barbershop owner said, "Well, watch this." He takes out $1.50, puts a dollar bill in his left hand, puts 50 cents in his right hand, and says, "Boy, come here." The boy comes up to him, and the man says, "Boy, would you rather have one $1 bill or 2 quarters for 50 cents? The boy looks at him and says, "I'll take the 2 quarters. I'll take 50 cents. The barbershop man hands him the 50 cents and says, "Okay, thank you so much. Your work is done for the day. You can leave." The men at the barbershop are like, "Wow, I guess he is kind of dumb." Well, guy gets his cut, patron gets his cut and pays, leaves the barbershop, and he sees the boy walking out of the ice cream shop across the street. And the man flags the boy down and says, "Hey, boy," he said, you just had 50 cents. You bought an ice cream. You could have had $1. Why did you only take 50 cents? And the boy licks his ice cream, looks at the man and says, "Because the minute I take the $1, the game is over." A lot of businesses, a lot of church focus, but also a lot of marketing businesses and a lot of folks that are trying to help are trying to get you to take the $1 because it looks sexy, it sounds sexy, it makes you feel good. Really what we need to do is we need to play a little bit longer of a game, go a little bit deeper, and yeah, it's going to look like we're just taking 50 cents at first, but wouldn't it be better to have 50 cents every day than take $1 and that's the end of the game? That's what we're talking about. To be the best known, you've got to take those 50 cents a day. It may not look like much at first. Over time, that's going to add up. Our efforts are going to add up. Your efforts are going to add up, and God is going to do great things. You just have to make yourself available, and you have to make yourself known and be the best known. So when someone needs you, when someone needs Jesus, they come to you and not someone else that's a false teacher with false hopes, false promises that is going to give them false solutions. God bless you guys. Again, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.